The Rites of Eleusis, an attempt at mixing theater, psychology, and religion in modern times, meant to induce an altered conscience and ecstasy over the period of 7 plays, one each Wednesday from October 19th to November 30th, 1910. The rites were Crowley's interpretations of ancient rites, likely having been inspired by Mathers's Rites of Isis, using music, incense, dance, poetry, and a libation made of fruit juice, alcohol, and anhelonium, a derivative of mescaline. Crowley had believed the 20th century to be the beginning of the Aeon of Horus. He wanted to use the rite to revitalize religion, believing religion was stagnant and leading to personal and social decay. Each act was to represent its own meaning for its own occult purpose, representing the search of what was lost, being the God that resides in us all. In the equinox of March 1911, he credited the rites to a suggestion made by Commander G.M. Marston, when, on May 9th, 1910, Marston had invited Crowley, Lila Waddell, and Victor Newberg to his home in Ramston, Dorset. Marston had become a probationer in the AA on February 22, 1910. They had gathered at Marston's to perform the evocation of Bartzabel, the goal being to invoke the spirit into Victor. Crowley would be the chief magus, Marston assistant, Waddell magus adjuvant, and Victor would be the material basis. The stage was set with a pentagram in the center, and in the center of the pentagram was the cross T. 5 pentagrams were around the perimeter of the circle, each having a ruby-red lantern placed into each, representing Mars. Finally, the altar fit to the magician, having the square and seal of Mars upon it. The square of Mars is created by incorporating the numbers ascribed to Mars, 5, 25, 65, and 325. Each planet has 4 specific numbers which correspond to its attributes. The first number of Mars is 5. The second is the square of that number, 5 times 5 equals 25, which is the number of the planet multiplied by itself. The third number is the sum of a column, row, or diagonal, 65, and the fourth number is the sum total of all the numbers, 325. The theory then applied is that anything which is connected with these numbers will also have some connection with the various planetary attributes. This was the system which motivated Crowley's published request for those attending to color coordinate their clothing to the ritual to be performed. The ritual consisted of 5 stages. First, the banishment and consecration. Second, a special preparation of the material basis. Third, invocations to Mars. Fourth, the dealings with Bartzabel. And finally, the closing. Victor had been placed in the center, being described as a psychically charged triangle. It said, when the spirit was constrained to speak through him, he managed to deliver in response to Marston's questions, Bartzabel's predictions of the approaching war in the Balkans and Germany. Marston was so impressed with the success of the ritual that he suggested that it might finance the growth of the AA by selling tickets for spectators to attend similar events. Crowley himself maintained a strong prejudice against the idea of charged dues in connection with admission to or continued membership of any spiritual organization, but was always susceptible to flattery and kept the idea of a public ritual in the back of his mind. The next event that led to the rites was a month later at an anhelonium party held at Crowley's apartment. That evening, Crowley suggested they attempt an artistic dialogue incorporating various media. The evening progressed, Crowley reading a poem, Waddell playing a violin selection, and Newberg dancing an interpretation of the literary or musical piece. What followed was an improvised performance which left the participants and audience alike in a state of energized enthusiasm. Crowley wrote later that he felt as though he had just taken part in a highly charged and effective ritual, remembering the experience with Marston in May and not necessarily associating the elation or success with any interaction of the Elonium. He began envisioning a public event which was both ritualistic yet aesthetically passionate. The final rite before the rites of Eleusis to influence it was the rite of Artemis, which I spoke on in my video, Aleister Crowley, Drug Habits and Beliefs. Ethel Archer would write a novel based on the rite, being fictionalized with Crowley as Vladimir Svarov. the alias he used renting his apartment with Alan Bennett, and Victor being Benjamin Newton, the equinox would be called the hieroglyph. She would say the libation's effect would linger for a week after, and Radcliffe would say the rite was weird and impressive, Victor's dance as graceful and beautiful, and Waddell's playing as filled with passion and feeling, like a master. With the success, Crowley would start promoting the rites of Eleusis, renting the Caxton for each Wednesday between October 19th to November 30th. He used several advertising materials, such as publicity photographs, broadsheets, and flyers. They were written and published. An example of one of the flyers circulating around London stated the following: "Working on old tradition, we find Saturn as black, a melancholy god, the devourer of his children, ideas of night, death, black hellebore, lead, cypress, tombs, and deadly nightshade. All these things have a necessary connection with Saturn in the mind of anyone who has read the classics. The first condition of this rite is then to make the temple a kind of symbolic representation of the sphere of Saturn. So the representative of Saturn wears the black robe. The time is declared to be midnight, though as a matter of fact it is only 20 minutes past 8. This is an ordinary theatrical convention, and Masons will think of certain analogies in their own orgies. If the brethren are fed, it is on the corpses of their children, as Saturn fed on his. If they drink, it is poppy heads infused in blood, symbols of sleep and death. Saturn further represents the earth, the plane of matter, humanity bounded by old age and death, humanity blindly groping after illumination and failing to get it. It is then the primitive darkness of humanity that is represented in this ritual. Therefore, we have the despairing cry, 'There is no God,' and as a logical result, the suicide of the high priest, for there cannot be a priest without a God. It is the blackness of uttermost despair, and so the ritual ends." It was intended to create an authentic spiritual epiphany for the audience. Believing the world needs religion, religion must represent truth and celebrate it. The truth is of two orders, one concerning the nature external to man, two concerning the nature internal to man. Existing religions, especially Christianity, are based on primitive ignorance, on the facts particularly of external nature. Celebrations must conform to the custom and nature of the people. Christianity has destroyed the joyful celebrations characterized by music, dance, feasting, and making love, and has kept only the melancholy. Crowley wanted the rites to be a sample of what AA members would experience, hoping it would attract new members. Before going over the rites, though, I would like to go over how those in the rites came to be in them. First, with John F.C. Fuller, who first had discovered Crowley's works in 1903 while posted in India. First meeting Crowley in 1906, after Fuller entered a competition by Crowley for the best essay on his collected works. Fuller had won the competition, winning $100, and meeting Crowley. He had been the only one to enter the contest. He never collected the $100 either. He had co-wrote the Rites of Eleusis, but after he became distant with Crowley. Next, George Rafolovich, who had wrote for Crowley in the Equinox, while Crowley would publish his short stories. He had apparently also purchased a traveling circus with oddities to later in life become a political activist and a propagandist for Ukrainian independence. Crowley had met Kenneth Ward on a climbing vacation in Westdale Head in the winter of 1909, becoming one of the first members of the AA. Kenneth had also founded the Cambridge Free Thought Association. Again, after the Rites of Eleusis, he would distance himself from Crowley. He had grown disillusioned with magic generally, and Crowley specifically. Ward accepted an offer to become a professor of mathematics and physics at Rangoon College. Once there, he became a student of Buddhism and ultimately embraced Christian Science. To Victor. Victor had met Fuller at the funeral of William Ross, the editor of the journal they had both wrote for, and in 1906, Fuller introduced Victor to Crowley at Cambridge. Soon, Victor was studying Crowley's works and becoming close with him. And in 1908, Victor and Crowley traveled to Spain and Morocco, the beginning of their sexual relationship, joining the AA the 8th of April, 1909, still being in a close relationship with Crowley. And by 1914, he had left the AA and Crowley. Next, Lila Waddell being described by Crowley as tall, finely built, a huntress lithe. Her face was Greek in delicacy, but what meant such a mouth in it? The mouth of a satyr or devil. It was full and strong, curved twice, the edges up towards, an angry purple, the lips flat. Her smile was the snarl of a wild beast. Crowley adored her, except for her Australian accent, believing it affected invocations. Before meeting Crowley, she was in a touring concert, coming to England to play as the lead gypsy in Waltz's Dream. Meeting Crowley in 1910, as he was returning to London from his trip to Algeria, joining the AA April 1st of 1910, taking the name Sister Agatha. Finally, Joan Hayes, aka Lone de Forest. She was described as having a beautiful face of the Russian ballet type, oval with beautifully defined eyebrows. Her hair was very black, her skin white. Most girls at the time did not use powder, but we thought it rather dashing of her use of powder, and terribly dashing when she took to using a pale blue or pale green powder to intensify this whiteness of her skin. This she had been taught to do by a famous beauty of the time. She was a poor girl who was just too marvelous to look upon and could not act at all, and had come before the days of the photographic model. She had the body of a child of 12. She was a freak of nature, though a very lovely one. She was both short and slight. It was as if her growth had been checked. She had absolutely no talent of any sort as actress or dancer. Her delivery was wooden, and her movements stiff. She was also quite stupid on general matters, but her beauty was extraordinary, and she was sweet-natured. Joan Hayes was a delightful, kind, and sympathetic friend. She had no interest in the occult. It is said that she had been appearing as a figurante in some ceremonial shows which had been given by Crowley. She either had applied for the job as a result of seeing it advertised or sent by an agent. She had an affair with Victor, but on August 1st, 1912, she took her own life, with Nina Hammett finding her the next morning saying, "She seemed often depressed, and one day said to me, 'I'm going away tomorrow for a long time, perhaps forever. Come in the morning and I will give you some clothes.' I was delighted, as I had very few clothes. I felt rather worried about her, but I did not know what I could do. The next day, I went to the studio and outside, pinned on the door, was an envelope, and inside was the key. I was rather frightened. I opened the door, and inside was a large red curtain. I hesitated for a moment, terrified. I pulled it aside, and there on the sofa she lay dead, with her mother-of-pearl revolver and her slippers beside her on the floor. Her face was quite white, and her golden eyes were half closed. She had placed the revolver on her chest inside of her dress, and shot herself through the heart and lungs. I called the caretaker, and he fetched the police. I, of course, had to be a witness. This depressed me for some time. A hand-written letter was found in the apartment after her death, and it was addressed to the London coroner, saying, "The last statement of Jean Merton, wife of Wilfred Merton, of the above address, written at present residence at Rossetti Studios, where she has been living under her professional name, Lone de Forest. Being an art student, I hereby state that although of sound mind, I intend committing suicide tonight because of intolerable position my extremely rash and unfortunate marriage has placed me in. It is my wish my body should be cremated." Nuremberg claimed Crowley as the ultimate cause of her death, feeling Crowley had ritually cursed her and brought about her suicide as a result of jealousy of her perceived power over Victor. It is an intriguing accusation. 15 years after this incident, Crowley fell out with another of his students, Norman Mudd, and cursed Mudd, saying he would die by rope and by water. And in June 1934, Mudd was found drowned, his pants filled with stones and bicycle clips fastened around his ankles. A rope was around his neck. In all probability, this was a case of self-fulfilling prophecy. Yet, this begs the question of the power of prophecy to become a curse. Now, we shall move on to the rites. I will be covering the first couple of rites and the final rite, beginning with the rite of Saturn, October 19th, 8:30 p.m., opened by Victor, wearing an Arabian headdress, greeting guests and checking tickets. The show was almost sold out, with tickets costing 5 guinea, being quite expensive at this time. The one ticket would allow admittance to all 7 performances. The guests were led to a room lined with 100 bamboo stools. The room would be lit by a dim blue light. The stage was set to the Kabbalistic tree of life, an altar being the center of focus. There were 2 large black cloths draped across a pole extending over 2 large, tall, narrow screens. They would wear their ceremonial robes of the AA, being made by William Northam. Suddenly, the room was lit by red orb lamps, and as 2 lamps were lit at the altar, a chant arose, and after the lamps were covered, for the dim blue to return. Brother Capricornus knocks his spear 3 times, signaling the beginning. He now says, Procul, o procul es profani, lighting the hell broth, being a large incense, now awakening the magister of the temple. The chorus leader beats a tom-tom while others clap and stomp, failing to awake the magister. Master Coeli now plays the violin, awakening the magister. She returns to her position. The Magister Templi, now at the Hellbroth, recites the Eye of Pharaoh. The Hellbroth burns out, signaling scene 2. The time is questioned and confirmed to be midnight, and the location as being on the frontier of the abyss. The Magister Templi recites Swinburne's Illicit, while Master Coeli continues to play. The Magister Templi then asks, "To what end are we assembled?" All respond, Shabbatai. This is the Hebrew name for Saturn, which also corresponds to the Benai on the Tree of Life. Magister Templi turns on the blue light and announces the presence of a traitor. All begin an inspection of the area. Capricornus pulls Capricornus Mercerius to the altar and stabs him with his spear, and Magister Templi announces, "So perish all traitors." Scene 3 begins. Magister Templi at the altar, all the rest still kneeling, Master Coeli being the exception, playing Abendlied by Schumann. After, they stand, one lighting a lamp, one playing the tom-tom, and the rest beginning to dance wildly. The Magister Templi says, "Silence! Enter the ark of increased knowledge." What is increased knowledge? Death. What is the ark? The grave. The Magister Templi says, "Follow me," walking the room counterclockwise. Capricornus takes every 3rd person until one is left. The Magister Templi hailing them forth, saying to them, "Thou must also die," opening the veil to reveal an empty shrine. Pulling the veil back, the light is put out. Magister Templi says, "Alas, there is no God." Others wailing aloud, "Silence." Scene 4 begins. The ceremony cannot continue due to the lack of a god in the shrine, so Brother Capricornus searches the shrine to only find a pile of dust. The Magister Templi now recites Colloquius Sentimental. Master Coeli playing, failing to bore Magister. They take hands, the lights brighten. Master Coeli plays Pain of Despair, all being behind the veil. The veil opens. Magister Templi is standing on the altar. He recites section 14 of the City of Dreadful Night. The lamp is blown out. Capricornus E dances wildly, banging the tom-tom. Brothers Aquarius and Capricornus tear the veil open. Brother Capricornus E throws himself at the foot of the altar. The light returns, and Magister Templi is found dead, Master Coeli holding his head weeping. The light dims, the veil closes, while Master Coeli plays a final dirge, Lila's own Marche Funbre. The ceremony is confirmed to be complete. In full light, Capricornus' sword drawn in front of the veil. The rite is over. Crowley had wanted the negative aura, but he had also planned on more publicity, being disappointed in the 2 only reports. This was also the first publicity event held by the AA, and George Cecil Jones and Crowley would sue the Looking Glass, becoming an investigation into Crowley's immorality. After losing, Jones and Fuller would distance themselves from Crowley, this being the beginning of Crowley's publicity problems. Next was the Jupiter Rite. It had the same intro, concluding that the Saturn Rite was not enough. The time was confirmed to midnight. and two go into position. Having no message from the gods, the two go around to prostrate at the Sphinx, asking for a message. The Sphinx begins to play music. They go back to their positions, one terrified and one amazed. Ganymede begins a light dance. They bear their bowls of libation. They confirm the time, noon. They and Sphinx rise, walking around and around until exhausted, trying to reach the center of the wheel. Hermanubis asks, Mother of Mystery, what is thy position on Olympus? The Sphinx replies, upon the rim of the circle. Typhon asks, how to cease lethargy? Hermanubis, how to quench activity? The Sphinx asks, how to give up ecstasy? CICT asks, what shines upon your foreheads? They all say, the eye within the triangle. What burdens upon your chest? Together, the rosy cross. CICT recites a poem, beginning the next scene. Typhon, I desire to begin the banquet. CICT, I heed not my passion, or the reason, or the soul of man. Mother of mystery, declare my will. The Sphinx plays an exalted, passionless piece. They feel nothing. CICT, Mother of mystery, declare my mind. The Sphinx plays a cold, passionless, yet intellectual piece. Hermanubis, this is music. This is the secret of Jupiter. Typhon feels nothing. CICT, Mother of mystery, declare my heart. The Sphinx plays an intensely passionate and sensual piece. Typhon, this is music. The secret of Jupiter. CICT now says, irreconcilable, my children. How shall ye partake of the banquet of Jupiter, or come to the center of the wheel? For this is the secret of Jupiter, that he who created you is in each of you, yet apart from all. Before him ye are equal, revolving in time and in space, but he is unmoved and within. Typhon and Hermanubis recite their poems, kneeling. Ganymede dances wildly, falling dead. The banquet officially begins with Sphinx, CICT, Typhon, and Hermanubis drawing their swords, guarding the veil. CICT disappears behind the veil, changing into a white robe with a panther skin and gold. Typhon and Hermanubis ask, Mother of mystery, hast thou the secret of Jupiter? The Sphinx begins a triumphant melody. Typhon asks where they are. Hermanubis says, Mount Kithiron. Typhon, procul es veri, asking the sisters to help invoke the Father and the Son. The Sphinx says, Per spiritum sanctum, Amen. Menads goes, Ivoho, Iake. Typhon recites a prayer on stage. Nagav then says, Ivoho, Iake, hail, O hail, what dreams are these? Autonon, Menades, and Nagav give their poems back and forth to then take libation. The sisters begin to dance while chanting. The CICT rises on the altar, throwing the veil open, raising his hand to recite a prayer. The light dims, and all begin a universal dance. For the CICT to announce, silence. The secret of the Father is in the secret of the Son. The Sphinx says, and the secret of the Son is in the secret of the Holy Ghost. Ganymede, Gloria, Patri, Heb et Folio. Typhon, et Spiriti Sancto. Hermanubis, ut orat principo. Sphinx, et nun est. CICT, et eret semper. All go amen. Sphinx says feasting, Hermanubis song, Typhon feasting, CICT grace. Sphinx music, Hermanubis dance, Typhon love, CICT the end. The veil is drawn, and the rite is complete. We shall now dive into the final rite, being the rite of Luna on November 30th. The 12-fold servitude of God is recited, and the veil is open. Taurus and Cancer confirm the time and location, being moonrise in the chapel of the Holy Grail. Cancer, what is my office? Taurus, warden of the Grail. What is my robe? Chastity. What is my weapon? Vigilance. Whom do we serve? The Lady Artemis. How many are her servants? 9. Who are they? 3 for the dew, 3 for the rain, and 3 for the snow. Who are the great officers? Thyself, the warden of the Holy Grail. Myself, the lord of the bow. a nymph, and a satyr. Pan interrupts, and Pan! They bear the cup of libation. Pan recites a chorus from Swinburne's Atalanta. They now banish the spirits of the elements, taking another libation. They banish the Sephiroth, more libation. They confirm the shrine is protected, another libation. Pan makes a prayer, and upon the completing of the prayer, a nymph appears dancing a virginal dance. Another libation is taken, and Pan recites another prayer, another libation. Pan recites a poem, rising. Pan asks the satyr to dance the dance of the scourge, doing so taking the officers off the stage, where they crouch. The satyr now dances the dance of the Sphinx and Pan, falling to prostrate. Pan steps to the throne of Luna, making a prayer, tearing the veil down, exposing Luna, who is playing the violin, and all is silent. Taurus, brother warden of the Grail, our task is ended. Cancer, let us depart, it is accomplished. Chaconne by Bach plays. And this has been the rites of Eleusis, and how they came to be, and who that took part in the rites came to be in the rites. And I hope you enjoyed today's video. And don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe.